What do you say about you as a prospect?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the preparation during the week. I feel like that play's made on Tuesday. All week we're seeing that play, seeing the tips and reminders. During the game, before the game. That play's made during the week. So seeing that play come out, I feel like that becomes muscle memory based on the practice and the time put in throughout the week.
Skills and ability matter, Keionte, but like you just said, those plays were made early on in the week. How has your time in college helped you with that preparation and also just natural IQ as well?
Yeah, I think seeing the game for years slows it down for you. So I feel like at times the game can slow down just based on seeing the formations multiple times and knowing and understanding what offensive coordinators and quarterbacks are trying to do in situations.
Keionte.
I mean, not to say you're an underdog, but
Yeah.
you had that underdog kind of in your heart.
Still underdog.
Yeah. And then we saw that this year, right, with Miami, you guys kind of fighting and pushing through to make it to the national championship game. How did you embody that, and the rest of the guys, like how did they also embody that as well, and fulfill you guys?
Yeah, I think you look at it like not getting the respect, and then it always makes you want to work harder, and I feel like our team and our head coach embodied that, and I feel like that was something that we loved that to be in that situation, always having something to prove, so that was something that we thrived in.
Having something to prove, I mean, you hear this is what it's all about, right? Something 32 teams,
Yeah.
it's the biggest interview of your life. Are you going to work out in the field real soon? So what are you looking to these teams to make yourself, for maybe a future top one?
Yeah, so I won't work out this week at the combine, but I will do everything at Pro Day. So that's something I'm looking forward to being able to show teams at March 23rd in Miami, Florida, that Keionte is that guy that they're looking for.
You were only in Miami for a year, but you quickly became a fan favorite, and I think we both can agree it was one of the best decisions of your life.
100%.
What made that Miami move happen, and what made that move so special to you?
Definitely would say relationships. I feel like Coach Cristobal recruited me in JUCO, and we had a great relationship. Coach Will Harris recruited me in JUCO, and we had a great relationship. Coach Etheridge, recruited me, and I committed to him at Auburn. So I just say relationships. Feel like being a good guy at times can pay off in the long run, and it did. So that transition, coming from Auburn and then Houston and then getting to Miami, it just felt super comfortable based off not even have to get on the visit, and you don't even have to tell the head coach your name. He already knows you. So it was just something. It was a comfortable thing. But I would definitely speak on the relationships. Just trying to become a better person and just build those relationships as times go on, because you never know when they'll pay off at the end.
The JUCO route is the road less traveled for everybody. How did that really affect you? Just putting your head down, to quote the great people in Miami, lacing your boots and getting to work.
Yeah, I think it turned me into a dog, man. You go there and it's a constant battle. You're battling with your teammates, but you're battling with other people. And one thing people don't know is when you start to pick up offers, it turns you into a bigger target at times. You got offensive tackles running way out of their formation, and where they're not supposed to be to come get film on you. It's just how it is. You'll go on Twitter and you'll see film strictly on top recruit in JUCO. Just basically film of you. So it's definitely something that required me to be. I had to be on my tips and had to be on my feet and on my P's and Q's at all times, because you never know who's coming around, and everybody's trying to give you their best game.
How do you think you'll remember this Miami Hurricane defense in 10 years?
Yeah, I think the standard is set, man. I think playing fast, playing physical is something that live on. I'm very grateful that the young guys got an opportunity to see that. You see them coming in. Even the freshmen that came in. Them getting a chance to see that playoff run and see the preparation throughout the week, and then seeing and hearing the conversations in the locker room and seeing how we executed and how we played on the field.
Yeah, speaking of physicality, what DBs you watching or admiring as whose physicality?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, growing up in college, in Auburn, we played in the same style of defense. Jalen Petrie played at Baylor, so that's someone I watch tremendously. Before every game. I love his game and how he goes about his work. And then you got to speak on the Jalen Ramseys and how he plays the game physical and the way you don't see corners naturally playing, but the way he steps out of his way to be a physical player.
Miami used you a little bit early.
Yeah, I mean, you can speak on a lot of those guys there. know, you got Zachariah Porter, East Key for, you know, a prime senior year coming up here. So very excited for him. You got the young buck Bryce Fitzgerald, you know, going into his second year, getting all that experience of, you know, coming with us. And then you got new guys they brought in, you know, the recruits and the freshmen. You know, it's just going to be, you know, that standard of that room is going to stay the same, you know, with Coach Harris and Coach T. Joe in that room. You know, they're preaching the same thing. So I'm excited for them guys there.
Keionte, guys of your length often want to play outside corner because that's where they see the money being. But your position flexibility, playing in the slot, being physical, what made you want to take that on the way that you have in your career?
Yeah, you know, to be honest with you, you know, how the slot thing came about. You know, I was the #1 corner coming out. I got to Auburn and there was, you know, 2 corners there, Nehemiah Pritchett and DJ James. You know, so I just asked Coach Etheridge, you know, I was like, man, I want to play football. You know, where can I get on the field at? And he was like, man, you know, the star position is, you know, somewhere I can see fitting in. So, you know, I jumped right in and I fell in love with it, and I've been playing it since. So that's a funny story on how that all started.
You mentioned Jalen Ramsey. What have you met with the Steelers at all? What was your impression if you had?
Oh yeah, I felt like they had great questions. You know, they obviously wanted to know what's going on in 24, and then, you know, just to see about how much ball I knew and stuff like that.
Keionte, what makes a good star?
I think, you know, just being versatile. I mean, when you look at the position, it's very, you know, a unique position. At times you got to be a defensive end, got to be a linebacker, got to be a safety, got to be a corner. So I think it's just the, you know, the ability to be a Swiss Army knife and be able to do multiple and also, you know, thrive at it. I feel like it's a key to defenses at times, and I feel like it needs to be evaluated that way.
Who'd you meet with formally? Who have you met with formally?
I met with a lot of teams formally. You know, very grateful for the teams that I've met with.
Cowboys, one of them?
100%.
You met with Tampa Bay?
You said what?
You met with Tampa Bay this week?
I have not.
You talked a little bit about being an older draft prospect, how he actually thought that was an asset for him. Do you feel similarly, and how might you respond to a team that might be concerned about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that, you know, that going around, but I feel like, you know, this game that we play now, it's a win-now game. And I feel like that takes a lot of the age things away. You know, some of these teams, you know, they don't have, you know, some of these coaches don't have time to waste. So, you know, I feel like you evaluate players as they can play the game of football. Because, you know, when you play this game, it doesn't matter how old you are. You know, I got to give a shout-out to my guy, Malachi Tony. You see a 17-year-old come in and change a whole program. So I don't think age is, you know, something that, you know, teams should be worried about. I know it's obviously contract-wise, but, you know, when win-now situation, you know, you get the best guys.
Have you met with the Dolphins, and would you appreciate if you found a people in Miami?
100%. You know, a lot of love for Miami, so that would be something that would be cool.
I saw a picture of Chris Paul recruiting you when he was at Oregon.
Yeah.
Can you just talk me through that recruiting story and how crazy it is that the coach?
Yeah, you know, a funny story again, man. I actually was going to Oregon. You know, I didn't want to make that decision on that trip, but, you know, someone just told me to hold on to it, and I'm glad I did. So I kept it in my pocket, but I was going to Oregon, you know, coming out, and then, you know, I was at another visit at another school, and I look at my phone, and it's Cristobal to Miami. And, you know, obviously Cristobal called at Miami, but, you know, it was just like, you know, come on, coach, like, you know, you just departed. And so it was something fun, but, you know, to come back and have that college and have that relationship with him, you know, that was the first thing he brought up. Like, I've been trying to get you since you were at Snow College. So it was just something fun.
Can you expand on that versatility thing? Do you think the slot position in the NFL has evolved? It used to be kind of the third, smaller, quicker corner. Now, sometimes that guy needs to be a linebacker. Sometimes he needs to be that kind of corner.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, you know, like I said before, I feel like it's a key to defenses. You know, at times, you know, being able to, you know, keep your nickel on the field and stay in too high safety, you know, being able to disguise more as a defense is something that you got to key into. And then, you know, being able to do that when teams get into 12 and 13 personnel, you know, you got to have a guy that can, you know, still be able to fit the run and do different things, you know, get off blocks and set the edge and certain things like that. So that's a key defender to have on the team, and I feel like, you know, it should be evaluated that way.
Rarer than people think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a unicorn position, and at times, you know, you got to have a guy that, you know, can do multiple, you know, depending on what the defense is trying to do. So it's something that, you know, is super exciting. You know, I feel like, you know, on tape I've shown, you know, I can be multiple and be versatile. So it's something that, you know, I'm super excited about.
Keionte, have you met with the New York Jets?
I have not.
Keionte, have you met with the Detroit Lions, formal, informal? If not, what would it be like regardless of playing a rotation with Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph?
Yeah, you know, Brian Branch is a guy I've watched a lot too on tape. Definitely a guy that's very versatile, plays the game the right way. So that would be a meaningful, you know, to be able to get out there and be with him.
You talked about at Snow College kind of having a target. Did anything like really wild happen? You're talking about linemen coming chasing you down. Did you have any experience like that?
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, man, I just like, you know, guys knowing like the offers I had. They're like, yeah, like, you know, calling them out. Like, you know, so it's just funny. Like, oh, we want that organ offer. Like everybody on the team, like, you know, targeting me, like in a way. So it's just funny, especially being a corner. You know, when you go to that other side, and you're on their sideline. It's just like, man, you can't even focus. It's just guys are just chirping all day. So it was something I enjoyed. You know.
So you were hearing a ton of trash talk.
Yeah, trash talk all the time, man. When you go to the opposing sideline.
What were they saying?
What was that process like for you? You know, obviously you had a long career in college, and it is such a change in the scene with NIL and transfer portal, and you kind of were at the start of it, now what it is. So I'm basically wondering what it was like for you from JUCO to Miami, facing that adversity, and also taking advantage of the new system.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, I just built a model on how to handle adversity. That's why you see a guy that can have a bad year in 24 and then in a bounce back. I feel like I built that from the moment I didn't have any offers coming out of high school, not recruited based on something I, you know, put myself through of not handling my schoolwork and having that chance to like understand that, you know, I have to be able to do everything I have to do and put my best foot forward in order for everything else to happen. So, you know, building that model and creating that just handled me and taught me how to handle adversity. I mean, when you get in adversity situations, you know, there's only two things you can do. You can either stop or keep going, and I feel like I've learned how to just keep going no matter what the situation was, and it got me here.
Keionte, what do you think have you talked to the Bears yet? And what do you think of their secondary last season?
Yeah, I have spoke to the Bears. You know, they do a lot of creative things on defense, and, you know, they do different things and put guys in positions to take the ball away. So that's something, you know, I pride myself on being able to do. So it was definitely interesting to get down and sit with the meeting and get tested by the coach there and see how they go about things.
What did they ask you about?
Just mostly just seeing what defensive schemes I knew and understood, and then they test me on some things that they do and seeing if I could comprehend it.
What was it like playing with Jacoby Tillman?
Oh man, that's my guy, man. I mean, we're actually roommates up here, so that's something that's cool. So, you know, just, man, a guy that can, you know, run and hit, and a guy that's going to turn you up, and a guy that's, you know, a true leader, you know, a guy that, you know, puts himself, you know, behind and always puts the team first, you know. So I'm excited to see where he goes and ends up, and hopefully, you know, we can go against each other and just, you know, get the relationship. You know, that's just a one-year relationship, and, you know, that just speaks on, you know, the type of people we are, you know, the bond we were able to create and the standard we have and the culture at Miami.
What are your impressions of the Dolphins?
All right. I appreciate y'all. Love the Dolphins. Love Miami.